Okay, I've done two little videos now. One about selecting beginning carving tools and one about simple inexpensive methods to sharpen your tools. This time I'd like to do a little project video. Every year around Christmas time I do some workshops and people seem to be interested in doing things like little Christmas tree ornaments. Here's a simple Santa face that makes a neat little Christmas tree ornament for your tree, for gifts, or just for grins and giggles. Anyway, I'm holding this up to the camera. I'm hoping you can get it and possibly get a screenshot of it and then use that as a template to follow along. Here are the instructions step by step. I've kind of broken it down into 10 rough steps, but it could be probably fewer steps than that. Anyway, this project starts with a block of wood that's 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch and anywhere from about 5 to 7 inches long. That's longer than you should need it to be, but I like to have it longer like that so that it gives you a little more to hold on to. The first thing you'll want to do is get some general guidelines. I'm going to be using basswood. Basswood is a fairly soft wood, although it's classified as a hardwood because it comes from a tree that loses its leaves, a deciduous tree. In the beginning, and unless you get into really fine detail and realistic carving, all you need to do is get yourself some general guidelines, some markers to get started. This is a caricature. It's not going to be realistic. So go with the flow. If the cut doesn't go exactly where you want it, change the figure up. As a matter of fact, these same steps could be used to make any number of faces or figures. But in the drawing I see, from the top of the hat to the bottom of the hat is 1.5 inches with a 1/2 inch brim. So I can mark at 1.5 inches and come back up a 1/2 inch. From the top of the hat to the bottom of the nose is 2 1/8. And from the top of the hat to the center of the mouth, 2 3/4. You could use a combination square to square these around, but try this. Use your finger and lock the pencil in and just trace. That probably won't go well the first couple times, but that's okay. Keep trying and it will go better, and you're going to find that with almost everything that we do. So you could work just from these reference lines, because really and truly, if you put this whole pattern on, at some point you're going to be cutting some of it away. You could also use square blocks. I use these triangular blocks because it makes a lighter ornament. All I do is set my table saw at a 45 and just rip the blocks at 3/4 by 3/4. I do some bigger ones too, like 1.25 by 1.25. But you could use a rectangular block. And for some of my tree ornaments, like a snowman and other Santa Claus heads, I carve the back as well as the front. So I need the full block. But anyway, if you want to get more detailed, you can take a piece of transfer paper or carbon paper. I picked up this transfer paper at the art store. Craft stores have it. I haven't found in office supply stores carbon paper anymore. I guess that went the way of the dinosaurs once we got computers and word processors. But tape that onto your block. Cut out the shape. Hopefully you can get that from a screenshot onto your computer, and you might have to play with the size, enlarge it, reduce it, print it out, but generally if when you print it out, these measurements match the face on your paper copy, it should be into scale for what I'm showing you. But even that doesn't have to be exact. You can make it larger and do the same thing. So now I'm going to tape the face on this piece of basswood. You could carve it in other woods as well. A lot of beginning carvers think that the wood to use, or a good wood to use, is pine. And quite frankly, most of the pines I find really miserable to carve. I don't like to carve in pine. Sugar pine's not so bad, but the others not so nice. The reason for that: pine trees pretty much grow, well, all trees grow a little bit year-round. They all grow a little bit year-round. And in the summer, there's a wide growth ring that is usually quite a bit softer than the growth ring from the winter, which is a very narrow band. Those narrow bands in pine from the winter growth can be really hard to cut. And right next to it is a piece of summer growth that's really soft. So it's difficult to carve in pine. Sugar pine's not so bad, but the others, for my money, I'd let them alone. I wouldn't do it at all. Now, once you think you have all the lines covered, peel back your tape from one side. Take a look to see if you got it all. And it looks like we have most of it anyway. If I trace on paper and carbon paper, and it's a more detailed kind of drawing, I might trace in a red pencil, something, a color other than the color of the lines on the drawing. And that helps me to see where I traced and where I didn't. So it's sometimes a really good idea to do your tracing in a different color. Some other woods that I enjoy carving. Love carving mahogany. Love carving white oak. They just carve really, really nicely. Mahogany doesn't hold all the detail that like a piece of basswood might, because it has a porous grain, but it holds good detail. You'll take notice, a lot of the Philadelphia furniture, ball and claw feet, all carved in mahogany. Really beautiful lumber to carve. So, once you have your design, you're pretty much ready to cut. Step one, we're just going to try and define the hat a little bit and cut it away from the face. I do these step-by-step carvings for the classes. That way the students can pick the step-by-step instructions up, look at it, try to match it, and see what it looks like. Right now I'm just taking the tip of the knife and tracing around the hat. And you don't have to cut very deep. You can repeat that cut over and over and over again. The one thing that you do want to make sure to do is follow the same cut line over and over again. If you make repeated cuts side by side, you'll weaken the wood and it will have a hard time holding the detail. And you can see that already when I make this cut into that what we call a stop cut, I'm already removing what I drew on the eyes. Some people at that point like to stop and draw their lines back in so they have them, and you could do that. There's no problem with that. But I'm going to take the knife, lay it down, just use the tip, and this is more or less a V cut, but this is a fairly straight stop cut and then sloping cut into it. Start to raise the hat away from the face. Now you're cutting. As a rule, we try and do what I call cut uphill. In other words, I can go this way and I can come this way, which is, I guess if you're looking at it, that would be downhill. But the thing about it, the little straws that carry the nutrients to the tree, the grain lines, run like this. And if I cut across them like this, in this direction, it's almost like petting a dog or a cat from the head towards the tail. You're laying the fibers down. But if I try to cut this way, then I'm standing the fibers up and it catches and it doesn't want to cut. So you'll see as you go along, you're going to wind up rolling your carving back and forth. And if you're working into a low spot, you're going to wind up working from one side to the other so that you're constantly laying those hairs down. Continue to deepen that. And work it around until you get a pretty good separation of the hat to the face. You're actually kind of drawing the forehead back in underneath of the hat. I'm trying to, and I'm hoping that I'm staying in the frame. I made myself a couple little reference marks here. But anyway, we're pretty close to finished with step one. I'm going to deepen a little more here. And a little more over here, which might be getting a little bit ahead, but that's it. Try and get those cuts cleaned up and sharp and matching at the bottom. So step two, we kind of moved into step two, or I kind of moved into step two. I get a little carried away. And that's taking out the side of the hat there a little bit and deepening things. I believe I'm going to do step three here and then let all of you take some time to try and get set up and get something going. I don't want to make these videos too long. I did one earlier today and I thought I was talking for about 15 minutes and it turned out to be 35 minutes. The other problem I had, my hands weren't in the frame, and I can't really tell that since the camera's up on the tripod. But in step three, you take out a V-cut underneath the nose to start to raise the nose away. You'll take notice we started on the square side of the wood, the corner of the wood, I mean. When I first began carving, I used to take and draw the figure on the face of the wood and then remove all this wood to brace the nose. In other words, if the nose was here and I wanted it raised, I had to remove all this and all this to get the nose away. And then a revelation struck. Actually, I think I read a magazine, and they talked about starting on the corner. And oh my God, what a difference. It's made the carving go easier. It made the carving go a little quicker because you weren't having to remove as much material. And it just worked out really well. And the other thing that I found out as I went along, if we put a square, like a framing square, up to our face at our nose, almost all of us, our faces are square from cheek to nose. Even though I'm a fairly round-faced guy, almost like Santa, or I have a beard like Santa as well, my face is fairly square. So, here's where we're at. I'm going to call this part 1 of this video. In part 2, we'll pick up with step 4 and continue on for more steps. But right now, this is where you want to be. The other steps will go fairly quickly. And it depends where you want to take it to. It can be finished simply, or we can actually add quite a bit of detail. So anyway, I'm doing my best, learning more and more about Facebook all the time. I still need to, YouTube, not Facebook. I'm learning more about Facebook too. I need to learn how to edit and splice things together. Don't know how to do that yet. And I'm going to have to do something different for camera and how I do this, because I don't really know as I carve along if you're seeing everything that I'm doing, if I'm blocking it. The only answer or thing I can think of there is to have somebody video it for me. But anyway, carving a simple Santa tree ornament, part 1. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to my station, my channel. Give it some views, give it some likes. I sure would appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Have another one for you shortly.